I was discriminated against my entire life because of my golden child sister. She now tried walking down the aisle at my wedding, and I finally got revenge. Ever since I could remember, my parents loved my sister more and treated her like a golden child. They didn't even try to be subtle about it because every time I accused her of stealing my clothes, they wouldn't believe me. But if she said that I took her toilet paper, I would get grounded. Even if there was undeniable proof, they'd still give her a lesser punishment and try to find a way to scold me in tandem. My birthday cake had to be a flavor she wanted, and my parents always denied knowing I didn't like that type of cake. Our family vacations were always to the places she wanted, even if it was an event that should be about me. My sister grew up spoiled and didn't like me, just used me as a punching bag. Initially, she would ignore me, but then things worsened as we became teenagers. My parents loved to boast about her achievements but never mentioned any issues, whereas with me, they loved to bring out any flaws of mine constantly as teasing material. In high school, she had no friends, and I wasn't surprised. My parents had spoiled her, which made her too introverted to talk to anyone. While I was fairly popular, she found this unacceptable and lied to my parents that all of my friends were substance abusers, and I was banned from staying friends with everyone. What saved me from complete isolation was my extended family. Most of my family lived in the same hometown, and I got along with my cousins despite some age differences. At one gathering, they invited me over and I told them how I was banned from leaving the house. When asked why, my kid self with no filter replied that it was because I wasn't allowed to have friends since my sister didn't have any. My parents found out quite quickly and had a huge argument with our extended family, and as expected, I was grounded for complaining. Eventually, my sister's situation worsened, so she changed schools. I guess the humiliation of extended family knowing her social status was bad, and she demanded to be changed. My parents immediately obliged, even though it cost them more since the school was further away. My sister made friends at the new school. I thought this would make her ease up on me, but instead, it made this worse. Her friends would come over and bully me, and my parents called it light teasing. I never called friends over because my parents were awful hosts to them, or my sister would accuse them of taking stuff and they'd believe it. I did become close to my cousins though, especially because my parents didn't dare to mess with them. I was slowly starting to believe that life was back at its peak, especially because I finally got a boyfriend. But little did I know that my sister had her ways of ruining this as well. I didn't want to bring him home at all, but when my parents found out, they insisted. We arrived at my doorstep, and since the moment he entered, my sister had been staring at him. At one point, we were separated, and he came to find me to tell me that my sister was flirting with him. He said that she came over with revealing clothing, batting her eyelashes badly, and started telling him how bad I was, and how good she was at having intimacy. He told me how he didn't want to listen to more of it and came to find me. I told him that he should leave and that I was going to confront her about it. When I confronted her about it in front of my parents, my sister told them a different story, that my boyfriend had instead tried to flirt with her, but she naturally refused since she would never do that to me. I forgot how favored my sister was, and of course they sided with her. My boyfriend wasn't perfect, but I immediately believed him. No offense to her, but she had the same body as my parents who were overweight. I knew for a fact that my boyfriend wouldn't try to cheat on my model body with my sisters. I argued back and forth with them, but my parents prohibited me from dating such a terrible boy. We tried keeping our relationship a secret, but failed to do so because my boyfriend wanted to get touchy once in a while. I ended up dating a different guy, but history repeated itself and the same story took place. I tried pointing out how this happened again, but they decided that meant I was incapable of making good choices and kept picking bad boyfriends. My new boyfriend was traumatized from this experience, so he broke up with me. Thanks to my sister, I was named the high school sleut and failed to get into new relationships. The tables turned, and for once in her life, my sister brought her first boyfriend home. Since the first second that boy entered the house, he was flooded with stories about my sister. After 2 hours of boring stories about my sister, I could tell that my sister's boyfriend was excited to leave. As soon as he left, my parents aimed toward me and asked, why couldn't I be like my sister and find myself someone like that? Their relationship lasted 3 days because that poor guy couldn't carry that much weight on his shoulders, both physically and metaphorically. Years passed and things remained the same. I was confident that this was the worst things could get, but little did I know that my parents and sisters had a worse in store for me. My sister finally graduated from high school, and you would think she became more mature for college, but she was still the same. She got accepted into college but had no scholarship that could decrease the financial burden. Her grades were bad in school, since whenever she got a B, we would all celebrate. If she got an A, which was once in a lifetime, my parents would invite all of our families just to celebrate this. My parents naturally made a lot of fanfare and told her they'd pay for everything. I thought her college departure would be the best thing to happen to me, but turned out that it was the beginning of very stressful years for me. Eventually, my mom came to talk to me about my upcoming high school graduation. She told me since they were paying for my sister's college, they had no money to pay for mine, so it would be better for me to start working immediately after graduation and wait until my sister finished university to see if they could afford something for me. This basically meant that I would either go to college with student loans or take 4 years off and stay at their house, where they also made me pay rent. It became obvious that she was trying to get me to throw a tantrum because she didn't like my simple reply. I told her I was fine with not going to university and never wanted to go in the first place. This was a flat-out lie, but I figured I could use her words against her. My dad later tried getting on my nerves with my mom, but he failed as well. After a whole lifetime of terrible parenting, I never had any expectations towards my education. A few years passed and I worked very hard and got a scholarship. Not to anywhere like the Ivy League, but it was a good enough course with a full scholarship. Knowing my sister would hate it and try to stop me, I put my achievement on social media at the same time I told them, even forced myself to thank them in the post. Now they couldn't forbid me from going, as they'd have to explain to the family why not. I guess my sister eventually got to them, and they changed gears and asked me if I was sure I wanted to go. They told me how my sister wasn't doing well in college, and since she was smarter and had better judgment than me, I'd suffer worse. I lied to them and told them that my courses were easier and that I'd be fine. They weren't happy with my decision, but couldn't stop me. College ended up being my savior, and for once in my life I was happy. I still contacted my parents and visited on holidays and such, but since they refused to pay for anything. During this time, I avoided introducing anyone to them, and I'm glad I did because this man ended up becoming my husband. Unfortunately for my family, my husband was the type of guy who loved drama. He won't forgive or forget, and he's probably cooking some revenge. People were baffled when I got together with him because of the big difference in character. Most people thought of him as an angry man, but he was the biggest sweetheart if you treated him with respect. When we discussed marriage, we decided we didn't care much about the ceremony due to our budget, as we'd rather spend it on our honeymoon. We sent out the engagement announcement and the save the date for a few months later. My parents didn't have the slightest clue and naturally demanded they meet my man. I wanted to grow a spine and refuse, but was having a hard time. The distance had made me think maybe my parents weren't so bad. Well, my husband looked like I canceled Christmas when I told him I would at least ensure they were never alone with him. He had been getting ready for this because he knew what to wait for. He even bought a high-quality recorder he could hide in a pocket to record it all. He was stoked, thinking of all the ways he could refuse my sister's advances, insult her, and then spread the recording of her attempts to my family. I refused to go with him, so he went alone and excited to meet them. When he came back an hour later, he had the most euphoric look on his face. Before I could say anything, he started shouting, "Babe, you won't believe the awful thing they wanted. We have so many opportunities to F them over." I was confused and wanted to hear the recording, but he told me it was better to listen to him first, or else I'd misunderstand him. As I was listening to his story, I realized I made the best decision of my life by choosing this man as my husband. My husband was the best thing that had happened to me, and I was glad that there was someone who would finally step up for me. He went over to my parents' house to meet them, and when he came back, he told me how many opportunities we had to F them over. I asked him to tell me what he meant, and he began telling me what had happened. My parents weren't necessarily happy with my husband because of his aggressive character, but they said how we're willing to pay for my wedding, on one condition. My sister would walk down the aisle on my wedding first, and in a wedding dress. My husband asked why, and they said that it wasn't okay for a younger sister to marry first, so it was only fair if my sister had at least the experience of it. My husband told me how he recorded the entire conversation with a grin on his face. He didn't try to say no to my parents because he was planning revenge. My husband told me how this was a perfect opportunity for revenge, and it helped me get out of a horrible headspace. We had a blast thinking up ways to screw them over this. We then called his much more level-headed brother when we decided on a plan. It involved having 2 venue addresses and giving them the wrong one. My husband's brother scolded us for this idea, calling it unethical and a horrible thing to do. So instead, we decided to invite my parents and hire security and not let them in. We also created the best scheme to get my parents to pay for the most expensive wedding we could get. My husband went back to my parents and said that he was willing to accept their offer, even though I wouldn't like it. He pointed out I don't like conflict, so if I was surprised by it, I might not throw a tantrum in front of all the people. Once that was agreed on, my husband brought up the pay. He told them that if they were to pay for the wedding, I would feel even more pressure to keep quiet. Once my husband and my father shook hands, I saw my grown sister skipping with joy in the video. For any discussion about my sister walking down the aisle before me, he'd go over to their house to talk, and so began the months of deception. My parents and sister thought they were tricking me, and my husband and I were milking them. We decided that my husband and sister would go over the food and decoration options, and every time my husband would point out the cheapest option available, he would then sigh and say, "It's a pity we don't want to abuse my parents' goodwill, so we wouldn't get the best options." My sister thought she was going to be a big part of our wedding, so she demanded that my parents pay for the best. My parents would then tell my husband not to worry, and they'd pay for the most expensive. We did the same thing for the photographers, DJ, and many more unnecessary things. Throughout this entire process, my sister tried flirting with my husband because she had the illusion that she was marrying my husband. My husband acted conflicted and made sure to keep a safe distance from them. My husband told me how he enjoyed the whole tricking them more than planning our actual wedding. We were sitting and reflecting on how we just turned our low-budget wedding into the most extravagant possible. A few days had passed and it was finally our wedding day. My husband and I were more excited about tricking my parents than the wedding itself, but I never imagined that things would go better than expected. Our wedding was planned to perfection, and our revenge was waiting to be executed. My husband and family had come up with what they thought was a perfect plan. They wanted my sister to arrive at the perfect time to walk down the aisle, so they would avoid talking to me. My husband and I made sure to keep our security hidden at first. As the guests and my parents arrived, all they could see was a woman with a list of names to check. Only after my parents arrived and sat down did we bring out security. We told him to not allow anyone my sister in and even agreed to pay a handsome tip if he didn't reveal we told him that. A few minutes later, my parents got a text message from my sister which said that my sister was 5 minutes away. My dad stood up and made some gestures with his head, and soon enough my bridesmaids were following him. After they all went down and took their places, my dad stood up at the entrance as if waiting for me. A friend of mine in on the plan texted me and told me to get ready. As soon as my dad took his position, the bridal song started playing. The doors opened and I walked in. My dad looked shocked when he realized that it was me instead of her golden child. He tried looking at the venue entrance to spot my sister, but she was nowhere to be seen. At this point, he was supposed to walk me down the aisle, but he didn't. He got a phone call from someone and made it as an excuse to leave and mumbled, "Something came up." There were gasps and confusion all around. The friend in on it loudly asked what happened. I lied and in a teary voice said he told me. It wasn't supposed to be me there. The friend then loudly went, "What did he mean by it shouldn't be you?" so that as many people as possible could hear and spread it. My husband's dad quickly ran over and took my arm. I walked down the aisle to whispers as people discussed what happened. My husband and I deserved an Oscar because of how well we wept fake tears. My parents never came back and they missed my marriage. No one dared to tell me what was was happening, but someone told me. He whispered in my ear that he had to go to the bathroom or else he would burst out laughing. Our plan had worked. I was told that my sister did arrive in a wedding dress. The security refused to let her in until my dad went there and tried threatening him with police, claiming he never heard of him. The security had no problem with the police coming because he was hired by us. At that point, my dad realized by then it'd be too late and tried to demand he let my sister in. My dad went after my husband and he pretended to be confused. He denied having ever agreed to something so ridiculous with my parents in front of everyone else. When they insisted he did, he demanded proof, and of course they couldn't find any. My sister was crying and apparently sat on the floor kicking her legs like a kid. My dad looked like he'd beat my husband, but security and other people held him back. The venue had cameras, but they refused to show me the recording of my dad punching my husband. But some people took videos and even uploaded them online. Watching my parents and sister get ripped apart by any and everyone who came out to check the drama was delicious. After years and years of being accused of stuff and not believed, to watch them have a taste was one of the best wedding gifts. My mother was crying, my dad kept changing from purple to white, and my sister was still on the floor crying and screaming. They kept insisting that my husband was in on it, but people kept asking why would my husband agree, why was there no proof, and why they wanted my sister to do this to my wedding. They were told to leave and had no choice but to do so. My dad apparently had to drag my sister up as she refused to leave the ground. Their taxi arrived, and before my dad got in, he said, "You guys are going to pay me back every penny." We were glad that he was gone and all of us went back to enjoying our marriage.